Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Recruit, Season 1, Episode 3. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with Max's situation. Obviously, because of what Owen was able to do, he was able to kind of get her transferred to a different like prison, or was like making it like wanted to make it like a federal thing, and got kind of kicked up to federal court because the whole point was that by doing that they eventually wanted to get like the attorney general. Well, because he finds out from Amelia the only way you can make her murder case go away is if you basically get the attorney general on your side to be the one to drop the case. So with all that happening, Max ends up getting transferred to another prison, but like she ended up having to go in front of the court and everything beforehand. And lo and behold, the daughter of the person she killed, it's the lady that Owen met last episode. Was like, I never thought we run into each other. And he made sure, she's like, wait, is that your client? He's like, no. I mean, it's like technically yes, but he's also like not officially her lawyer. He's kind of her handler in this situation. So technically he wasn't lying to her, but he was super lying to her because it's like, I mean, I am working with her, and he felt bad because her dad super got murdered by Max, and now I'm kind of putting her in a position where she'll kind of get away with it. So, and especially when later on he was like, do you know why that lady killed your dad? She's like, no. Did you even care about the reason why your dad died? And he was like, no. That's the problem. Like, you communicated with a stranger, and that ended up being such a, like, now it's like you opened up to her and she opened up to you, and now you're feeling more sentimental because now it's like, right, you're not just strangers like vomiting all the stuff you're going through to someone that you thought like, hey, you're never going to meet again. And like, well, now it's like we're meeting each other multiple times. He even had to go check on her because he also wanted to understand why Max did what she did. And we find out why. Max had it because in court, like, Max is like, I'm sorry for your loss, but your dad was a piece of shit. I was like, wow, that's some spice to be talking. I was like, wow. At first, Owen didn't hear it. So he was like, what did you say to like your victim's like daughter? And I was like, yeah, because I was hoping Owen did hear it, because he's like, oh, Max isn't a good person. He's like, well, you already know she brutally murdered someone. Once again, she bashed his skull in. So once again, you're like, oh man, like that was kind of mean and kind of jacked up, kind of show you an evil side of her, until we ended up finding out, well, because we know she has some sensitive spot when it comes to children, as that whole conversation last episode showcased when the person that works for Talco, it's like, hey, you're going to spy on him for me? I'm not going to kill your daughter. I'm just going to kill everyone else in your family, because I would never touch your daughter because I'm a mother myself. So I think she legitimately meant that, but it's more so like no, your dad's actually a shitty human being, because we end up finding out in actuality he was abusive. The woman she met in prison, Cora, that's the person she ends up trying to get a phone off of, Cora is played by Amanda Scholl. I hope I'm pronouncing her last name right. The thing I best know her for is Cassandra, or Cassie, from the 12 Monkeys TV show. I was like, dude, I recognized her immediately. This episode also clarified a mistake I made in my thinking. I don't know if it came across last episode, but I'm going to clarify something I misthought. I thought the niche business that she was doing, I thought that directly correlated to the asset stuff that the guy we now found out, the guy that Owen met, the guy that was her handler, we now know his name is like Xander Goy. So I was thinking that those businesses were equated, but it's like, no, the niche business she was in was what she did in America. Now, I can only assume, based on everything with Cora, her business is, if you come to me, my niche business is I can make people disappear, no questions asked, or at the very least give you a place to kind of hide from anybody, because I'm assuming she's taking the qualities of the time she spent as like a CIA asset and stuff like that, because she's like, yeah, it is basically a safe house. Think of it almost like a prison cell, but the way she knows the ins and outs of stuff like that, how to keep Cora away from everybody. She specifically was even like, oh yeah, from the FBI, which I don't know if we ever got an answer from why Cora was like hiding from the FBI. Like maybe there was something on, maybe Cora might have been, maybe she was like a material witness or something like that, and the FBI wanted her to testify against her husband. or boyfriend, because we don't, because I don't think Cora is his his daughter's mom. I think that's just like Cora was his new girlfriend that he would severely beat up. She was in a very abusive relationship, and I think it might just be the thing of the daughter just never knew her dad was that person. Now, and maybe she never knew that story, because we don't, like, she brought up her dad. We have no, like, in the picture we saw on the phone was just of her and her dad. We have no idea, like, whether her mom's still in the picture or not. I think it's an interesting contrast considering, like, yeah, they have both in the Dead Fathers Club. We know that Owen's situation is kind of like complicated circumstances with his mom. She's not all there. So we don't know about her. I keep dodging her because I'm trying to remember what her name is. Was it Kelly? It might have been. I could not remember. That's why I keep dancing around her name. We'll go with Kelly for now, but I'm most likely wrong. But I'll say Kelly, but I'll just, going forward, I just continue not saying her name. But the daughter, I don't know, the fact is the mother hasn't come up in the picture makes me wonder, like, maybe she knew and maybe she just hid it from her daughter, or maybe she died and the daughter just never knew about the abusive douchebag her father is. So now having the context of it, you're like, wow, Max got in trouble for basically a justified murder. And I can only assume that's where the Talco stuff comes into play. Well, because Talco knew her and he was doing... Well, because it also seemed... Because she was like, oh, my dad was a truck driver. So he was already mixed up in something before Max got into the picture. Because that was like the money. He was taking it somewhere. So... I guess maybe she was caught up in some illegal stuff too. Maybe she was... Cora was caught up in whatever he was caught up in. So when he beat her up and... Max had no choice but to call the police just so that she could get help, because it's like, hey, if I don't call the police so they can bring an ambulance here, you're going to die, Cora. And now it's like, right. And the sad thing is, too, you see, like, she still has a scar on her face from the whole situation. And she's like, yeah, you're the reason why I'm here. And it's like, well, now we also see, like, now we get the context of, like, oh, man, Max isn't the bad person we think she is. She was still one that's like, hey, I did my job with the government, and what did they do? They tossed me to the wind, they screwed me, they burned me, and they left me in America. Like, that was her 2 years into the 5 years she ended up being here in the US, and she wanted to go home, but obviously she couldn't, and everyone else made that harder for her. So I just thought that was such a fascinating look into those circumstances, kind of getting a better understanding of Max, and kind of also seeing her in a better light and being like, okay, so Max can be manipulative. She's got some shadiness to her, but we also see deep down there is some good in her, because, you know, those maternal instincts, I guess, kind of kicked in when it came to protecting weaker people. I mean, I think even though she's manipulating him to some extent, I do think that, and obviously Owen won't know this, but she's a better person than he's kind of giving her credit for. And I do believe she is helping him out, because she actually does. Well, I mean, she's like, right, even if you die, another lawyer will eventually get sent by the CIA or the Justice Department or the State Department, so I'll be fine. But I think she's kind of motivated and invested in Owen, that she kind of likes their back and forth maybe to some extent, or maybe she sees something in him that makes her go like, you know what? Kid, I'm gonna keep you around. So we'll see how that pans out and that plays out. And I know the daughter is going to eventually find out Owen's involvement in Max's circumstances and potentially getting the case dropped. If that plays out, that's gonna be bad news bears, essentially, you know. Max also kind of talked about her daughter a little bit more too. It's like, because Cora was like, oh, if I had a mother like you, and she's like, yeah, don't say that. You wouldn't be thinking that, especially if you knew what happened to her. So it doesn't sound good. I'm curious what ended up happening. Is it something that Max blames herself for, but it was something outside of her control? I wonder, was it something that happened while she was on the run, like before she got shipped off to the US, or is her daughter actually still alive, but it's just like, right, she ended up choosing her job over her daughter, so now she's stuck here away from her daughter. I don't know. Because it could just be like her daughter is alive, but she's hiding that information because she doesn't want to tell Owen, because she can't fully trust him and doesn't want to take the chance that he might use that as leverage. But I don't think Owen would. He might be put in a position, if her daughter's still alive, to do that, but I don't think he would, just because it's like, no, I'm not about to like threaten someone's kid just to get them to do what we want, you know? So, like I said, we'll see. Speaking of Owen picking up with his circumstances in Vienna, I love that he comes out the river, a whole bunch of spies roll up, and he's like, guys, I legitimately am just a lawyer from the State Department. If I was in the intelligence department, like, wouldn't I actually be so much better? Would I really be this bad at this whole spy thing? He's like, I'm going to go back to my hotel and I'm going to change it. Like, wow, you really know nothing about espionage, because you would know that's super not the place to go, because Mika and what's his face, a handsome dude, which I love that he's like, he called him a zaddy, and the guy looked at him. He's like, you know, a fashionista, like sexy guy or something like that. I love it. I was almost kind of like, oh, it's funny hearing the word zaddy used. I mean, I'm sure it's been used in television before. I legitimately don't think I've ever heard that like used in a television show before. The term zaddy. I just thought that was interesting. Once again, not saying it's never been used, but it's like off the top of my head, it's the first time I think I've ever heard it and used in the context of a TV show, and not just like, you know, like internet memes and stuff, but not memes, but just on the internet in general. Anyway, I thought it was really interesting too when he went to the store and he talked to that lady in German. I'm like, wow, you were actually like, I don't know, because I do like that Owen. It's like he's a let's face it. I mean, Noah Centineo is quite the beefcake. So it's like it's that interesting thing where it's like, oh, he isn't just some meathead. Like he legitimately I mean, he is a lawyer after all. Like, he's still like got his degree and everything. So I think I do sometimes underestimate. It's like, the dude does have a good head on his shoulder, but that story he told the store owner, I'm curious if that was true. He was like, oh yeah, because he's like, I know what it's like being the new kid. He's like, I got bullied all the time. So he's like, yeah, I kind of have a little bit. I mean, he made excuses, but I'm wondering, was that true or not? I mean, his dad was in the military, so it is a possibility that they moved around a lot. So him being in a German school for some time isn't completely out of the question. I mean, especially because it's probably like like I grew up on a U.S. base or something like that. Like, probably once again, someone being a parent in the military means you probably like lived all over the place. So I thought that was just kind of a neat little thing. They didn't lean into it too much. It's literally like a 30-second conversation, but I thought like, oh, that's so interesting. And it makes me go like, I don't think that was like a spy lie. I think that was him legitimately being honest, which is so funny because you have Violet, who doesn't trust him, because it's like, oh, trying to pump Amelia for information. Amelia's like, yeah, he hasn't told me anything. And then she's like, oh yeah, like she ends up talking to Owen on the phone, and she's like, oh yeah, this is something else got to go on. I'm like, oh, that's so fascinating. So she's not, I guess, because she realizes what Violet's doing, but I guess it's kind of like I kind of like this guy, so I don't want to screw him over. So it's like, right, let me have my fun first, and maybe I'll change my mind if he does me dirty. But at the very least, like, she's not immediately reporting to Violet and them. So I think that's so interesting. Like, the fact is that she's not doing that, like, because it seems she already is in the know about it. They're just like, hey, like, if you find out information for him, kind of slap my way. And then he's like, yeah, I know I owe you. But it's like, yeah, like, you're still being like, oh, no, like, hiding the fact is, because if she knew Owen was on the phone, like, Violet would have been like, okay, try to grease the wheels more. So it's just kind of like, oh, yeah, he didn't want to talk about work when they actually went on their date, when in actuality he did. He dropped some information here and there, but she still like, I find that so interesting. Which I also love that when he rolled up on their date, he's like, yeah, I just got back from Arizona, so I haven't had time to change. And she gave him a Gucci suit. And he's like, yeah, like some people would be turned off by a woman who knows exactly, by your directness. And she's like, what about you? He's like, not me. I love a woman who knows exactly what she wants. She's like, good answer. He's like, thank you. And then he went into the room that she's got set up, and she's like, yeah, basically her job with in the State Department and stuff like that, it's a stepping stone to like just being kind of the head of a news station. So she's kind of practicing and stuff like that, just because with State Department credentials, she'll be able to get an even bigger paying job there, and it'll make I think that transition a little easier. So I thought that was interesting, and I just find it fascinating. It's just kind of like, yeah, that's her room. I mean, I guess it's no different from like a YouTuber who has like their recording room. It's just like, aside from just like, oh, this is my room is my recording room. It's like, no, like I have a dedicated recording room. I guess it's no different from that. But it is interesting that on his date with Amelia, he runs into Hannah, which I do get an answer to something I was wondering last episode. I thought like it was legitimately like, oh, they are exes. So they dated for 6 months and, well, I think it might not be that they dated for 6 months. It might just be that they broke up 6 months ago. He's like, yeah, it's a little weird, staying with your ex. But she's also like, I don't care what you do in your free time. When you're me, I'm your focus. So the Hannah stuff might be some of the asterisk complications, because Amelia, because you see, like, no, I see that you're totally in love with her. Fine and dandy, but it's like, when you're with me, you're on my time, and I need you to focus on me. But it's like, oh, like seeing Hannah with some other dude, which you could also tell Hannah was bothered by seeing him on a date, because both, like, he kind of brought it up to Terrence, and she also brought it up to Terrence, so... And I do love that they met Sarah, who's trying to help out with the whole, the senator trying to subpoena Owen, which puts him in the complicated space, because it's like, cool, give him dirt on your balls, dig something up, because if you don't, when you get subpoenaed, everything you worked on, even anything at all that you've been working on, is going to be brought to, like, he's like, everything. She's like, oh, everything. And basically she was like, we are going to rake you over the coals, like, type of thing. She was like, she was like, in a similar fashion, just not the exact words. It's like, we're going to fuck you. So it's like, it's kind of that type of situation. It's like, cool. So he really needs to figure this out. So do you give in and dig up dirt on Nyland just to satisfy this senator who they have their beef? So that's definitely going to be interesting. Eventually, Owen did have to open up to Max about the person that is responsible for trying to kill him, and he's like, this is most like, because he doesn't want to give out a fellow agent's name, because that's a whole compromised position. It's like, I'm giving you more leverage, but it's a good thing she knows now, because it's like, cool, the person that tried to kill you is the person that screwed me in the past. And she ended up finding, because of her own connects, she ended up finding out, like, she found out his last name, but because she knew he had a thing for pastries and stuff, so she kind of narrowed down the window and found out his name's Xander, and even left. It's like, oh yeah, you came to pick up your pastries? Someone left you a message. And she's like, I got you, motherfucker. So it's like, cool, I know your name now. You're not just a hidden agent anymore. I know your name. Because that was the biggest issue. She couldn't get in contact with him when she was looking for him for 5 years ago. He got to, like, just dump her and disappear. And the way Lester talks about him, it's like, hey, he's on it. Like, CIA people start at a 6 on a scale of 1 to 10. It's like, no, they start at a 6. This guy's an 8. He's ambitious. So it's like, yeah, he wants all this buried because, yes, he's going for the golden goose of all, like, espionage workplace, and that's Moscow. Like, everything, I wonder why that is, though. Like, everything, even Jack Ryan set up, like, oh, Moscow's the place to be. Like, that's where the real career maker, like, happens. Like, that's the golden goose everyone wants. That's the cushy position everyone wants. I wonder what makes Moscow, like, so coveted in the I don't know if that's just all spy, organizations want that, or is that specifically like a CIA like positioning you want, station that you want? Either way. But she now has a name, and she knows who she needs to go after, and she knows who to burn in order to save herself and use as leverage. So he was already kind of nervous last episode. That's why he sent the people after Owen. But now it's like, cool, I at least had the anonymity of her not knowing, because he was probably had some comfort of knowing, like, well, Owen most likely won't tell her. But now it's like, cool, she knows my name. Now I'm getting a little antsy. Now we have an issue. The last person I wanted to know my name is her, who's willing to play all the cards right now. So who has all the cards that stack, such high leverage. So. But aside from all that, I love that this episode dives into one of Lester's issues in this episode, and that is that the contact he's has is with a dude named Dave. Well, Dave's going through a nasty divorce. His wife, Tracy, is like, I'm going to spill everything on CNN unless he pays me 2 years of child support. So now he's in that kind of position to the point Nyland is like, dude, you've sucked and screwed this up so much. Yeah, I'm bringing in Owen to kind of help with this, which now for Lester, it's like, oh, you're the golden kid to bring in. I've been in this job longer than you. I've even been a lawyer longer than you. He's like, I've been a lawyer like 6 months longer than you. And yet still you've been in a job for like a week. And all of a sudden you like, Nyland's just like all on you being like, oh, you're the go-to guy. So they end up going to Lebanon, and it's like, because he ended up having to get help from Max to find out how to survive in Lebanon. And I think this kind of speaks volumes about how they operate there, that Lester's like, he's like, oh yeah, I've lived in Lebanon for 2 years, and he's rattling off all this stuff of like, yeah, like mainly the good parts, but it's like, oh yeah, there's this like the sucky like corruption parts of it. It makes this such an infuriating but beautiful place, and the driver was kind of excited about it. It's like, right, that's how you hype someone up. You kind of see, because I think it is that international perspective of like, oh, you're American, and all you see is like America as a central fold of the world, by showing like people like being like, when you show like, hey, I know your culture, I know this country well, it showcases like, oh, you're not your stereotypical dumb American. I think it kind of smooths relationships over, and it kind of makes someone probably a lot more like, it's how you schmooze a little bit internationally, I think. I also love when they were on the plane, he was just snatching up like those little drink bottles from the he stole a whole bunch, but I guess he ends up bringing a whole bunch back, not only from the hotel room, and he tells Violet, like, oh, we restocked the fridge and everything now, so. But I went to go see Dave. Dave rolled up on them, and it's like, oh, cool. And Dave's like, yeah, I'll sign the papers, but he's like, no, I actually won't. Lester and Owen did have this interesting conversation, because he's like, oh, like, how did you, because he had asked Amelia before, like, everyone has, like, there was a whole conversation about relationships, obviously, in the workplace, and he was talking about, at least, like, in a place where no one really trusts each other, because he even asked Lester, like, hey, like, would someone from here actually kill me? And it's like, I think it was one of them, he was kind of, I want to say he was saying, like, domestically, they wouldn't do it more likely because it would just be too much paperwork, but like internationally, yeah, if you're in another country, they probably could, it's like, yeah, everyone's kind of after each other's throats in this, it's a dog-eat-dog world, like you can't really trust anybody, which once again does not foster the best workplace, but I guess like when everyone's kind of keeping to themselves, keeping their heads low, while also doing their job, staying focused, I guess when the environment boosts work effectiveness to some extent. I don't know. Either way, it turned out him and Violet had been pretty tight. She was she was a jag, and he was like, she didn't like it, so they kind of took things to like they kind of ride or die together type of situation. But he's also talking about how Owen's so lucky and stuff, and Owen's like, right, you think I'm lucky, like, learn more, like, you would just assume you know all there is to know about me. Like, if you knew more about me, you wouldn't really be so quick to be like, oh, I'm lucky. So, I guess with everything he's going through right now, plus what his life has been, and Lester did kind of take note of that, but didn't really say anything. By the time, I do love when they eventually roll up on Dave the next day when he didn't sign the papers, and it's kind of like, yeah, because if you don't do this, we're going to, basically the CIA is going to like take you, you're going to end up going to court, and you're basically charges are going to get brought up on everything you've ever done. You're going to be so blacklisted and blackballed, you'd never be able to like work anywhere. Plus you'd be on the no-fly list. So also it's like, so you'd be going away, and it's like, you wouldn't want to abandon your child financially and emotionally. So he ends up signing the papers, and you're just like, oh, they walk away victorious. I wasn't expecting that to kind of go as smooth. It's like, yeah, Lester thinks you're such a great guy, but it's like, I'm here to handle the tough love part of the thing. So they handled business and came back victorious. And then Owen also has the situation of like, cool, the attorney general is waiting, and he's telling, and I love the way he's just like, I think it's because of that whole conversation of like no fear, and him just kind of like steamrolling ahead no matter what challenge is in front of him, whatever wall he's got in front of him, he's going to scale over it. So the Attorney General is like, okay, we're not going to do that. He's like, sir, we're going to have to. You're going to have to make this happen. You're going to have to make this work because what she knows could cripple our intelligence knowledge, and you do not want that. You do not want the devastation of what she's capable of doing. And I do love how that's paralleled with the immediate scene where Xander finds out that Max knows his name. So I do love that parallel there. So a lot of very, very, very interesting developments. I'm very curious to ultimately see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good